Hello everybody, my name is Christian Quick and welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be talking about data generation, and tomorrow we are going to be talking about data folders. So data generation is when it is automatically generated by the computer. There is still very minimal manual things that you have to do, but it's going to take care of the rest of everything. And then data folders, you do all the manual work, but there's just a lot more things you can do when you do it manually. And then there's one more data thing that we'll be talking about, which is advancements, and I figured that they're complicated enough where they can have their own video. Now, this is probably one of the most complex topics doing it by generation. This is the first one we're going to be talking about because we have to open things like the fabric mod and the build a Gradle. So we're going to start with the Gradle, and here we have your process resources, and this is where we are going to start our pathing. So I would write def data output, and it would be a string, and then if I equal it to let's say src slash main slash generated, it will put this in a special generated folder, src main, and then instead of Java, it'll be its own generated file. That's the idea. And so what we need to do is we have loom. We'll do it in here, and then we'll do runs, and then we're going to have data gen, go again, server, not run server, just server, and then from here we're going to have the name called data generation, VM argument, and this one is going to be called minus d fabric dash API dot data gen, and then I'm going to do control D, that's going to copy it, and then this other one is going to be dot output dash dir equals, it's going to be a dollar sign, and then we're going to have one of these. It's going to be called file. In here, oh, did it not do the? There we go, because it's supposed to be like that. And then here we're going to have data output, the thing that we put in here. We're going to close it. We're going to close it, and then there is that. And then from here, we are going to do run dir, and then we're going to call it build slash data data gen, and then that should be all closed. And then the last thing what we have to do for this one is source sets, and then in here we're going to do main resources src di dir, and then it's going to be plus than or equal to our data output. And then we have our three unique things in here. And then we have to test compile, right? Because that's not in here. Nope. Tasks with Java type compile 17. Yeah, that's fine. So that's supposed to be there. That's for something else. So from here, we're just going to leave that be. And then we have to go into our fabric mod, and we have to enter it into our entry points. So I mean that this is as complicated as that's gonna get. Don't worry about it. Let the computer handle it. And then we're gonna get into our new entry point. Our new entry point is going to be fabric dash data gen is what we're gonna call it. And then in here, it's gonna be this, and then we're gonna do net dot your name dot whatever the mod is dot data. Oh, we haven't actually added the folder. And then we're going to, so we're going to make a folder in our mod called, basically it's going to be package. We're going to call it data, data gen. We'll just call it data gen. And then we're going to have to make a class, and we're going to call the class mod data generation. And right now it's red because it doesn't exist, so let's do the class mod data generation. And then as soon as we make that class in here, the fabrics, see now it's no longer red because it is now here. But for our mod generation, we're actually going to be doing an implementation. So this would be the first implementation that we got. But we got the data generation entry point. All right. So now when we implement something, it's going to take us the red line saying, hey, you're missing something. So we can implement the methods uninitialize datagen, and we're going to add it in, and it's added in. So now we need to add the stuff that we want to override, because override means that it's coming from something. So let's say we were talking about a color, and this says the color is going to be blue, and then here is name your color. So if it came from this, it's implementing it. The default means it's going to be blue, but if we override it, we can override it to whatever color we want. I don't know why I felt like using color as an example, but that's generally how it is. This is, we're pulling from something, it's being implemented into our thing, and then whatever comes from here, if we do nothing with this, it's just going to give us our default stuff. But there is some stuff that we want to specifically mention because this is our mod data generation. This is talking about everything. So any type of data generation is going to be initialized in here because we have this as our on initialize for our mod, but this isn't something that goes in here. We don't initialize it through here. We have to initialize it in our own. So like this is our client. We need to make its own thing, and it's going to be called data generation. So in here, we can do the fabric data generator and dot pack, and then we'll call it pack, and it's going to equal the fabric data generator dot create pack. Beyond that, all of your packs, because you can call this whatever you want, but this is where it's going to be called. It would be pack dot add provider, and then it would be whatever provider you decide to use. So let's add some providers that we're going to be using. So we are going to need some new classes that need to be initialized. And the only things that I'm going to be mentioning here, let's add the first one, which is mod loot table generator. Generator. And this is going to extend the fabric block loot table provider. And then it's the same thing. It wants us to add something, so we're going to implement the generate, and then here is the generate. And then from here, loot table is talking about our block loot tables. So from here, let's just add the first one. So add, drop, and then from here, you need a block. So we need our mod blocks.cement, because that is our block. That needs to be added. And then at the top, I forgot to do create constructor matching to super. I usually do this a lot. It fixes a lot of issues that get called. But in our data generation, so we have our add provider, and I can simply call it mod loot table generator. Ooh, I actually saw it. You would do colon new, and then now it is all set. That is for the loot table provider. We're going to add two more. One more for the So this adds the drop. So if I was to break it, um, it will automatically drop cement when I break it. Um, but because it didn't do that before, but now it'll start to do that. And then the next thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna add the models. So from here we can do model provider, and then this is going to extends, and then this is the fabric model provider. There's a class that we're missing, implement methods, constructor matching super, before I forget that. And then from here, we have two things. We have our block models and our item models. So that means we're going to be doing two things. So from here, let's do our block state model generator dot register cue ball textures because it is textured on all sides. And then we can do mod blocks dot cement. Easy peasy. And then we got to do the same thing for the other one, except it's not a block state. It is going to be an item model generator, and it's going to be dot register. And we need to register that what it is. We're doing mod items dot beating stick, and then we need to call what it is. So if it is for models dot, there's a lot of models that we can do. So generated and handheld are the things that. So generated is we've kind of explained this when we did the item, and then we said that it looked better as a handheld because of the type of item it is. Um, so you can change however you want the model to look. And then the last thing that we are going to add in here is we're gonna add it, but we're not gonna quite use it until we start getting into more complicated stuff. This is going to be the mod world world generator, and this is going to extends the fabric dynamic registry provider. And we're missing some methods, so we're going to implement those methods, and then if it asks us, yep, we're going to do construct matcher, the matching super. And then this is going to, we're going to need to do, we're going to do entries dot add all registries, the get wrapper or throw, and then this is going to be registry keys dot configured feature. We're going to hit this. We're going to do Control D to copy the whole thing. And then the other one is going to be called placed feature. Now, we don't have anything that generates in the world, but when we get there, we're just going to have this placed there. And this return, the get name, it actually has a name that we will be returning. So it is going to be return, and then we're going to call it our mod. So HMH3 in this case. Put a little colon. And now this is all good. Coming back to the model provider, I know we added 3 of them, but loot table is for blocks only generally, models is for your blocks and your items, and then world generator, we just haven't gotten to a world generation yet. We will soon though. We will soon. Trust me. Trust me. But for here, we need to add the other 2. So we have our mod loot table generator. We have our model. Stop that. Model provider. And then our last one is our world generator. So now they are all in here. They are all good and ready to go. So from here, now that it's all good, we can hit the little Gradle little mixture here. It's going to reload the build in Gradle. So we got a build successful. To pull it up, you have to go to your Gradle, your tasks, and then I think is it in Fabric? Run data gen. So it's going to run the data generation, and it should add a folder, and we'll see it at the top when it's done. It might actually start the Minecraft world. I don't know. No, it doesn't. But now we have a generated folder. And in here, remember, it's basically a copy of our resources. And so in here we have our assets, we have our block state, our lang, our model. But here we are, if we look at our assets, it's got block states and models, which has our stuff like here. So if we look in our assets down here, we have our block state for cement, block states for cement, and then for our models, we have the block and item model in here. So now they it won't do anything, I believe. Actually, if I try and start the world, if I run the data generator again, it's gonna crash because it already registered those things. And then I think now I simply just gotta run the client. It might have an issue, yeah. So now when that happens, now I have to, I believe, now I have to delete these, um, because it basically says that there's two of them. So if they're now gone, deleted. Um, let's delete the we deleted the block states and the models, and so now they're here. And let's see if they transferred over okay, because now they can no longer be in here. So we're going to take a look at our folder, and we're going to join into the new world. And everything should basically be the same. All right, so now we are in the world, and we have both our cement block, and we also have our beating stick, and everything is working fine. The only difference that you'll notice is we added the loot tables, so now I can break the blocks, and they will have their own loot table, so they now drop. So that added the loot table for the concrete. I don't have it requiring tool, so it's fine. But that is now a thing. That is what the mod loot table generator does. Is so every time I add a block, this will add the loot table. Or the other thing was the models. So the model simply makes it so that the block points to the cue ball textures, and we have it already doing these kinds of things. Now, I would say that data generation and data folders are an option. You have to choose doing one or the other. You can't necessarily do both. Now, I do have both in the sense that the names, the lang file, and the textures are in here. So it does clean this up a little bit in our resources. But in our assets folder for the block states and models, those are generated up here. Now, I don't like looking in the two areas. I prefer to have data folders rather than doing it through here. But as we continue, if there are any specialized models, I will put them in here, and then any like simple blocks, we'll put them in here, and you'll see how it's so we have simple block state and then complex block state. So I mean, if I had like a stair or something, or if there's just maybe I just don't know how to use it through the data generation, then we are going to be using both as we go through this series. But I'm going to point that out now that as I use both, I mean right now I don't have anything complicated models, so I mean when that comes, I'll do models, block models, and then the complicated block. But cement is its textures on all sides, and it's literally pointing to a texture which comes into here. It's really not that complicated at all. The most complicated thing was the setup between the Gradle and mod, the fabric mod, and you only have to set it once. It's already set up. We never are going to be touching these files like ever again. This one will touch in once when we get into main, and then there's one called client that we'll be making. But beyond that, then we'll never touch this one again. So, and then it's literally just going to be hard code and soft code. So, and soft code down here. And then all it is just making stuff. That's literally it. If you wanted to have these files in your down here, um, you can do that. You can completely delete the data generation. You don't need it at all. It's just for people who prefer to do it, it is much easier to go, all right, I have made a new block, and instead of, adding to this folder, calling the name, and then going into the item folder, and then calling that name as well as the block state, cement is used in 3 places here. And then when I click on each one, I have to type it out again, and then for this one, I have to type it out again, and then for this one, I have to type it out again. So I have to write cement 6 times. So inside the code, and then the actual name of the folder, and then for when I compress it into data generation, there is simply your loot table. I want the block to drop cement. Um, oh wait, no, it does. Here it is. Data, HTML3, loot tables, blocks, cement. So it is here. For it flew way over my head. So on top of the 6 blocks that we had to make, the 6 things here that I was talking about, all we have to do is go to our model provider, Control D, and then change the block model to our new block. And then literally that's it. By doing that, I just did putting here, changing the name, putting it here, changing the name, putting it here, changing the name. And then for loot tables we'll talk about in the next video. They're pretty complicated, but if you just wanted to drop itself like this, that's perfectly fine. And then when you compress the cement file, I mean, making loot tables themselves are a little bit complicated, but if I'm just doing a block and I just want the block to drop itself, nothing advanced, crazy like that, all I have to do is go to loot table provider, Control D, and then I can literally just type in dot new block, whatever it is. So hopefully you understand the simplicity and like how much like time saving it does. But there are some blocks that are a little too complicated for me to understand how to use them with data generation. So we are going to have to write it out the 6 or even more times because there are some pretty complicated blocks, and unfortunately we're going to have to manually write them out. But hopefully I didn't sound like a broken record repeating myself a couple times, but it's kind of hard to try and describe what I exactly mean. Data generation is basically just, it's a time saver, but only for simple stuff. That's basically it. If you don't want to use it, you don't have to, but it's a nice thing to have when, it saves time. So I think that is going to do all for this video. So thank you guys so much for watching, and without further ado,